Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Welcome to Ukraine Daily News. Today we're gonna have a big segment about the Russian summer offensive. Remember that one? In spring of this year, it was discussed as one of the most dreadful things that can happen to Ukraine. That analysts and very much experts in quotations have been telling that Ukraine is running low on manpower, that Ukraine doesn't have any more strength to defend. We've heard statements that Russia will advance and capture everything, and the only way for Ukraine to go is to surrender. Well, now the summer is over, so let's look at the situation on the front line and actually see what was achieved and what wasn't. If you would listen to the Russian propagandists or Moscow shills, you would only hear that Ukraine is losing and it's already actually lost, that Ukraine doesn't have an army anymore and the only thing that they have is cripples and old people that are being forcefully mobilized 24/7, and actually the Ukrainian society doesn't support these things altogether, and actually Ukraine is ready to capitulate. But when you start pressing them on the fact that, like when I look to the map from afar, it doesn't look that a lot of things have actually changed in a while now. Why is that? To which they would say, like, no, you just need to zoom in a little bit more. And then as you zoom in, they say, aha, we advanced here, therefore we are winning. Checkmate. But unfortunate reality for these pieces of humanity is that this is not how warfare works. The warfare operates on task and objective goals. So there are certain goals that are being set, and then these goals are trying to be achieved in a certain amount of time. And if achieving that goal within the set time was not possible, then that's already a failure. But more importantly, you might also set some kind of minimal objectives that at least the time was not spent in vain. And those would be some kind of a minimal objectives for some kind of a wartime period. And then if those objectives are not achieved, well, what have you achieved actually? Have you actually spent your resources wisely? Because Russian objectives were pretty grand. Now, if you roll back the time and you start looking what Putin was saying, what were projected as the ultimate goals of Russia for this period, at the start of the spring, Russia was close to Mirnograd and Pokrovsk, and they were telling that, yep, it's very clear what our goals is. We're gonna capture Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. That is goal number one. Goal number two, we have the city of Toretsk that was captured, by the way, by Russians and reported that it was fully captured on the 7th of February 2025. And then you have Chasiv Yar, that was the pain in the butt of Russians for over a year. Those were the targets, and actually the goal was to capture the city of Konstantinivka. That was the outline goal for this period, because they need to get towards Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, very much so. Then there was also a goal to collapse the Siversk pocket, and more importantly, around the north, there was also a desire to capture the city of Kupiansk and fully move Ukrainians to the west bank of the river. But even more than that, you might remember that it was also at the start of this year when Russians were able to push Ukrainians out of the Kursk region, and after that, Russians came out with statements stating not only we're gonna capture the whole of Donbass, which they will not only that, but we might capture some additional regions from Ukraine, and they might reconsider because next time it's going to be more regions that we will capture. And it was said that they would capture Sumy region, which was a little bit overstatement, but in the silent kind of unspoken circles, it was expected that this breakthrough from Kursk will continue and Russians will be able to reach city of Sumy, and if not capture the city of Sumy, then at least semi-encircle it. Around Kharkiv, actually, there was also statements from the Russians. They were stating that Kharkiv offensive was a little bit too static, so they would like to have it revitalized. So they were actually telling that city of Kharkiv should potentially be ready because there's 50,000 troops that are being prepared here at the front lines. You remember those articles being written by the Western media at the start? Well, there was some pushes in these areas, but then they got all obliterated. What happened? Where are they? Russia has not moved a meter, a single meter towards any closer to Kharkiv. They all got completely obliterated. Kupiansk, arguably, this is where Russians had some success. But then, did they actually had success or not? Because they reached the northern part of Kupiansk, but as soon as they tried getting somewhere, then Ukrainians adapted to the situation and already counterattacked and pushed them back. And summer is gone. The window of opportunity is now closing. We're moving now into winter, and then it's going to be the winter campaign, yes, because the war doesn't end, but we're trying to understand what has actually Russia achieved, what was done in these months. And right now we're looking as like, well, whatever you were hoping to achieve there, it clearly was undercut, and you haven't achieved really a lot. The arguably biggest success was in Liman direction. But again, the biggest success here was around this area right over here. And from here, just to get to Liman, they will still need additional time. Arguably, it will take them until the autumn, deep into autumn, until they will reach Liman and they will start fighting for Liman. But again, it's slow. It is very, very slow. More importantly, around the area of Toretsk, yeah, they have captured Toretsk right now. But if you look closer enough, if you zoom in, then you see that pretty much the front line is at the edges of Toretsk. So they nominally kind of finished capturing of the city that they declared again that they captured fully on the 7th of September, yet they moved barely past it, without even speaking that Chasiv Yar that they were still trying to capture for 1.5 years, while they are controlling the main parts, they are still not controlling the city fully. And more importantly, they are not controlling the parts that would allow them to move towards Konstantinivka. That was the goal during the summer offensive. So Chasiv Yar, Toretsk pocket direction, again, nothing achieved. Pokrovsk, oh, here we see something happening already. We see the salient and so on. Well, the problem for Russians with this salient, that it goes nowhere. Like, it was a threat, of course, because there was a threat that they will cut out certain Ukrainian forces, they will able to pressure certain things and circle, but it was contained. And now it's causing more problems for Russia, because now they're controlling territory, yes, but very unfavorably controlling it. They cannot expand it. You know, when Russians are doing the salient, they would actually penetrate and move to the sides, right? To expand it, because it's very bad situation to be in, to have this narrow path forward. Well, that's exactly what's happening for Russia. They have been in control of this area for a while now, but Ukrainians are pushing from the sides. And Russians here is like, what are we actually doing? Because this direction doesn't get them closer to their goals. I mean, it does capture certain settlements. It moves towards Ukrainian defensive position, defensive lines. But what exactly are you doing here? And now we also are hearing that Ukrainians are succeeding in their push around Mirnograd towards this direction, that together with the push from the north creates pressure of Koptieve, potentially cutting off this whole Russian salient altogether. So we should ask Russian shills, what have Russia actually achieved? Arguably, the biggest gains that Russia got was in this southern Pokrovsk area. In this area right here, around Velika Novosilka. And I don't wanna say things that will upset a lot of my Ukrainian viewers, because every square meter of Ukrainian territory is sacred, and we don't want Russian occupiers taking even a centimeter of the territory. But in a military sense, this achieves nothing. There is no great objectives in this area. Yes, this area was important when it was not closed, because there was this additional pressure from this side allowing Ukrainians to hold Avdiivka, but all of that is gone. Now Russians are just advancing, and it's mostly fields here. The first real settlement in this area that is literally important is Zaporizhia, which is located right over there. And they are way, 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 way further than that. So looking back at the objectives for the summer offensive and the goals that were achieved, No major areas of importance that were outlined as primary goals. Sumy, Donbass, nothing even close. Well, maybe some middle objectives, capture some kind of a encirclement of Pokrovsk, cutting off all of the supply lines so it's becoming completely untenable. Nope. Now even Ukrainians are counterattacking, and they're potentially cutting off like a major Russian salient. Russians are actually in trouble, especially because they have been exhausting their forces. Even the most minimal goals that you can say, that Toretsk, that was declared captured at the 7th of February, it was now finally captured in reality. But again, Russia moved just a couple hundred meters beyond the city. Chasiv Yar, if we take some kind of minimal objectives, like absolute, like slither of some success, Chasiv Yar still not fully captured. Russia has captured 1,500 kilometers of Ukrainian territory during the summer offensive. It is a 0.25%, a quarter of a percent of territory of Ukraine. After the whole summer, arguably, year has two major campaign cycles, winter and summer, 0.25%, and it was during the period when Ukraine was arguably one of the weakest, where there was issues with US supply, where it was unclear whether or not Europeans will supply stuff, whether the US will allow selling of weapons, whether it was the ability of Ukraine to produce certain things. In the latest couple of months, we see Ukrainian production really scale up. Long-range strike capabilities, Flamingo, Palenitsa, other things, Neptune. And Russia says, well, we captured 0.25% of the Ukrainian territory. And because we were attacking on all fronts at the same time, we actually captured that little bit of territory on all fronts. We just haven't really captured anything of significance. But, we're advancing. And therefore, whatever we have advanced this summer, we're going to declare it as a victory. But this underscores, very importantly, what is happening with the Russian military. The deterioration of the command corps of Russians is insane. They're able to advance because they simplified their tactics to the minimum. Basically, have a map, draw an arrow, send in people towards that direction. If at the start of the war it was something organized, now Ukrainians are reporting that it has been mostly disorganized. There are certain organized units like the Rubicon drone brigades. Some of the VDV units are being used in tandem with some of the mechanized assaults. But for the regular troops, regular grunts at the front line, they're just being essentially shown direction and sent go. And that's about it. And that's how Russia can advance. They are able to advance because they're advancing everywhere. But we've seen that even if they're breaching some of the defenses, because Ukraine cannot defend well everywhere, and there are certain issues with that as well, but even when they breach something, they're having major issues exploiting their opportunities. If Russia continues this, it's a non-starter. 0.25%. It pains me to say that Ukraine lost territory this year, but what has actually been achieved? And final, very important point, aimed at people that actually support Ukraine, but for some reason believe that Ukraine is running out of manpower or having major issue against the Russians. And I read your comments, I know you're there. Listen, if Ukraine is actually out of manpower and cannot resist Russia, who stopped Russia at Sumy? Who prevented Russia to go from Kharkiv and encircle Kharkiv? Who were the people that are stopping Russian and advancing and capturing anything around Chasiv Yar, Pokrovsk? Who are these people that are counterattacking right now? If Ukraine doesn't have any manpower, who are they? So the data and results on the ground do not support the notion that Ukraine is completely exhausted and running out of manpower. Do they have issues? Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure, yeah. But not to the extent that you are talking about. Thank you so much for watching this video. I initially thought of putting additional daily news after this segment, but at the end I decided to just keep it clean, and I will put those news tomorrow in the video, so don't be surprised that I will have potentially two different shirts tomorrow. In any way, thank you so much for your time. I love you. Trust in Ukrainian Armed Forces. Slava Ukraini, and I will see you tomorrow.